This is the ultimate guide on self-discipline. So self-discipline is the quality of a person to be able to follow through with things, to be consistent, to start things and stick with them until they're done, having a strong sense of self-integrity. So you say that you're going to do something and then you actually do it. So all of this falls under the banner of self-discipline. And there are people out there, perhaps such as yourself, who struggle with self-discipline. And there are a handful of reasons why this is the case. And this was myself. This was my own history growing up and moving into adulthood. I struggled terribly. I struggled mightily with being able to finish things. I was able to start a lot of things, and I would have a lot of visions and ideas for all sorts of art, books, articles, music, business ideas, all sorts of different types of ventures and plans and ideas. And I would either just only allow them to remain as fantasies, or I would start them and just never follow through. And then there would be, I would call this the graveyard. There would be a graveyard of ideas that just kind of ended up, in different parts of my computer or around my house, and I would just never follow through. And then it would create such a blow to my self-esteem every time it would happen that it got to a certain point where I couldn't even muster the enthusiasm to start anything anymore, because I'd be like, oh, well, if I just start this, it's going to end up being like these things over here. And there's less and less of a point of even being enthusiastic about these ideas anymore, even though the ideas and visions would come and they would be so clear and they would feel so doable. I could hardly trust myself to do any of these things anymore. I just didn't have enough integrity. I didn't have enough discipline. So at a certain point in my life, I committed myself to figuring out how to have self-discipline. I made this a very, very chief priority of mine, and I set about learning, reading a lot of books, watching YouTube speakers, and reading articles and just whatever else it would take to cultivate this quality of myself. And eventually I was able to, and then I brought this into my teaching and my coaching practice as well. So I'm going to tell you all about that. So if we've never met before, my name is Brent. I'm a coach. I'm also a healer and an intuitive. And typically the usual fare of this channel lately is a lot of spiritual awakening, spiritual realization, stuff that's at my own personal leading edge. But where my journey began, more or less, was in this area of self-help and self-discipline and motivating myself to do something not just once, but consistently over time. And so that is the area that I cut my teeth on. And so every once in a while, I feel a compulsion to speak on this topic and really give everything that I've learned on this topic. And I've been in that area lately. A fun bit of history is that I used to post a lot on a subreddit called r/getdisciplined. And so if you're not familiar with Reddit, it's just like a big messaging forum where you can post a lot of stuff. But chances are you're probably familiar with Reddit. And I used to live on r/getdisciplined. That was my home, and eventually it was my business home. And what I would do is I would create an article where I'd write about some different facet of how to have self-discipline, like a new idea or a thing that's been working for me. And then usually people would click through to my profile and learn about my coaching practice, and they'd sign up for a one-on-one intro sort of consultation session with me. And then a certain percentage of those would sign up to be clients with me. And then I would coach them to have self-discipline. And so over the years, in terms of these one-on-one consultation sessions, I just looked at the number. It's over 600 people. So I've had over 600 conversations with total strangers, listening to them and learning about their particular situation where they're finding it difficult to have consistency and motivation in their lives, and advising them on what they can do, how they can unlock either their behavior or their psychology to move forward and develop the discipline necessary to create whatever is their particular dream or idea. And then there would be some people that would eventually hire me, and I would work with those people, sometimes for a full season. People would sign up for 6-month blocks, and then they would love it so much that they would hire me again. And then there would be some people that I just continued to work with over years. And so I was able to work with them on deeper and deeper levels to cultivate the more profound levels of success, both inner and exterior. So in other words, I've been able to speak with hundreds and hundreds of people horizontally, like just in a one-off quick conversation, but certain people vertically where we've been able to go all the way in our conversations. And then more so than this, in my prior life, I was a charity fundraiser, a face-to-face fundraiser, and I was able just to speak to thousands upon thousands of people in my local area, which was Toronto, and just learn about human psychology just in general as I got to know these people. So I'm saying all this to tell you that I've had these discussions and I've written posts on the subreddit r/getdiscipline. For certain years, I was just the #1 top poster on that subreddit. It had hundreds of thousands of subscribers, tons of posts all the time. And I was the top poster, both in terms of volume and in terms of upvotes. I was #1 there. And I would regularly put stuff that would be the top of the month. And so I'm sharing all of this with you because I would like to really state my authority on this subject. I don't think there's anybody in the world who has gone as deeply into the subject of self-discipline as I have. Nobody has written about it as much. Nobody has taught about it as much. Nobody has coached about it as much. Nobody has given themselves over to this subject as much as I have. Or like if anybody else has, then it's very, very few people. So all that to say, I'm going to I just had this inspiration to list out what I feel like are the most important ideas and the most important frames and ways of going about self-discipline. And I'm going to share them with you here. And I want you to receive this properly because it's a YouTube video and nobody pays for YouTube videos unless you pay for premium. And it's really just psychologically difficult to value what we get for free. And I completely empathize with that. Like if it comes for free, then it's like, oh, like I'll watch it later or whatever. And so I want to issue a real invitation to you to commit to what I'm about to share with you. Not all of it, but just simply to commit to hearing this, watching it, taking it in, and allowing this to help you bypass all sorts of heartache and headache and confusion and despair and trial and error, and just benefit from my 10+ years of doing this. Because it was in 2012 that I first made my post on r/getdiscipline, and it was the top of the month for that month at 300 upvotes, which now I'm pretty sure it'd have to have several thousands of upvotes in order to be the top of the month in the subreddit now. But that's how it was. And so that's where my journey got started. And at a certain point, there was just nothing left for me to get or say on the matter. It just felt like it was time for me to move on to the more challenging and exciting realms that I'm here to learn and teach now. And so this is just a visit back to a school that I no longer study at, but want to just teach so that you can have this. And it should go without saying that everything I'm going to share with you now, if I could share this with myself back in 2012 or earlier, it would unlock everything for me. Now, this isn't to say that it will do the same for you. Now, I'm under no misapprehension that everything that I say for you here is going to unlock you. After all, you are on your own particular journey and no journey is identical. And I completely see that. But I believe that what I'm about to share with you, you will find at least a few, if not a lot, of important things that will just help you bypass all the trial and error, as I was saying before. So good. You'll see me referencing some of my notes here in my notebook as well. Good. So let's just start here. What does the end game of self-discipline look like? So let's just say you have perfect, amazing self-discipline and you're able to just, and you don't need to learn about it anymore. You don't need to ask about it anymore. You just have it. What does that actually look like? Does it look like, for example, that you can just program yourself like a computer and just like tell yourself to do whatever you want? You'll always do it. So the answer is no. So learning perfect self-discipline is sort of like learning perfect puzzle solving, where you can't really go online and ask, how do I solve puzzles? At the very end of the day, every puzzle is unique. And so when you're addressing a puzzle, you will need to learn what it takes to unlock that particular one. Now, there are certain general principles that you can carry with you from puzzle to puzzle to puzzle, but you will never arrive at a point. At least you should not expect ever to arrive at a point where your whole life is locked in and everything is done and you're now just on easy street and everything is just smooth sailing from here. Don't hold out for some sort of situation like that. Instead, consider your life as just going from one frontier to another. So you're at this frontier and then the next one and then the next one and then the next one. And you can take certain ideas and techniques with you as you interface with each frontier, but you can't unlock them all at once. It's just one after the other as you are able to turn more chaos into order with every successive week, month, and year. And even then, it's like, this is not to say that the journey is linear. It's of course a messy, sort of soupy journey with ups and downs and breakthroughs and setbacks. So you should build this into your understanding and expectation as well. Now, if I were to address r/get disciplined in particular, I will say that there's one type of post, that a question post, like the ones that solicit and seek advice, that pops up the most, where people will speak about their situations in very massive dramatization and hyperbole. And they will say things like, Reddit, help me, I've screwed up my life. I'm totally in the gutter. I've hit total rock bottom. All of my opportunities gone. Everything is lost. I'm a total failure. I'm totally lost. This kind of thing. And I'm going to slow down a bit. I'm going a little bit fast here because there's so much I want to cover with you, but I'm going to slow down because everything needs its due attention. So, okay. We can respect the feeling sentiment of that drama. So if you feel like, my life is in shatters and I'm at rock bottom, we can respect when it feels like that, and we don't have to argue with it and say to the contrary. But at the same time, if we start talking about our lives in this way and we believe in it excessively, then we start to run into traps, because then we start talking about ourselves and our lives as if we're failures. Then unconsciously we have no choice but to recreate what we believe about ourselves and our lives. So our beliefs are a very powerful creative mechanism about our lives. So if you keep using the word failure and lost and waste and disappointment, then at a certain point it becomes difficult to turn it into something else. So just simply be aware of where you are dramatizing and over dramatizing your situation, because the real thing that we want to do here is we want to seat you in your power. We want you to find and reclaim your sense of power and influence over your life. And this is done by making everything very simple and not complicated, uncomplicated. All we want to do is just ask, what is there for me to do now? And then do it. Begin. There's something incredibly powerful about the word begin, because you and I, for our whole lives, up until we're 70, 80, until we're just about to die, we are always in the process of beginning. We're always in the process of beginning. So I would love for you to say every day in the morning, let's begin. If you feel like everything is just screwed up, messed up, everything's gone, you lost the house, you lost the car, okay, let's begin. Where do I begin? Where do I begin? And we just simply start putting down a brick after a brick after a brick in order to construct our house. So I'll just touch on a few things that don't work. This will be a relatively short list. And most listeners, I think, are beyond all of this, but it really bears mentioning that brute force doesn't work. So if you feel like you can come at your journey of self-discipline, consistency, productivity from a place of just pushing and effort and brute force, this will not work. And I do not recommend that you try it this way, because you are drawing upon a finite source of energy as opposed to an infinite source of energy. And so the finite source of energy, it will run out. Your willpower will always run out, and then you will burn out very, very surely. And you can see this for yourself if you find yourself just getting more and more tired and frustrated, like as time goes on. That's how you know you're on a course for burnout. And there should be no illusion about what happens if you continue this way. Conversely, just waiting around, like just waiting for the right inspiration, waiting for the right technique, waiting for the right app, waiting for the right book, even waiting for the right YouTube video, just the right inspiration, like, not this, not this, not this, not this. That sort of waiting for something else, waiting for that missing piece of information as a strategy, it will not work. It does not exist. That one little missing piece of information does not exist. It doesn't exist. And if it does exist, it's what I just told you. The fact that it doesn't exist is that thing that you're waiting for. Do not look for one single way. Instead, I recommend looking for a blend of different ways and ideas and techniques that you will make into your own personal practice. Because just as a definition, or excuse me, just as a rule, whenever people such as myself come on and tell you about what works, all we can ever do at best is describe what works for us, right? I'm not going to go talking about what works for everybody or what works for somebody else. I'm sharing what works for me, and what works for me is a blend of everything I learned from everything else. I had to separate the baby from the bathwater in everything that I've taken in. And so you will have to do the same thing as well. Also avoid concluding that your dreams cannot be made real, that your potential cannot be actualized. And I'll lump in there as well, giving up. So you may feel a temptation to give up or conclude that your dreams cannot be actualized. But what you will discover, this is a very, very interesting thing to see and be honest about, is that if you've ever had a time in your life where you've just given up, and I have a lot of times in my history where I just give up, give up. What you'll notice is that it's not possible to really give up in some sort of a definite sort of final way. Like you can't just land in this space of having given up. It always feels like you can do that, but you really can't. Like even if you were to try to give up on your dreams. Instead, what happens is you sort of end up in this territory of giving up and no longer trying. But then as a result of that lack of trying, there's a certain resentment and bitterness that starts to come up from inside of you, and it starts to ferment in the form of just stagnation and blame and criticism, and you just feel like critical of everybody else, and it makes you want everybody else around you to give up as well, and you'll feel particularly triggered if somebody in your life changes their life for the better in some way. And that's what happens when you don't honor your own movement towards evolution. So it's not possible to really give up in that way, because the discomfort that you feel as a result of giving up just gets stronger and stronger until it manifests as some sort of physical ailment of some kind, or you get back on the horse, you get back on the train. Good. So now I'm going to share with you 10 things that do work, that will probably work for you. 10 points. Most of these are mindsets, because if you have like a lot of, when I talk with a lot of people want to hear like, what do I do specifically? What do I do? But when you have the right frame of mind, then whatever you do with that frame of mind will work. It'll be perfectly good. And the truth is, if I tell you what to do, if I say, hey, drink a celery smoothie and do yoga and get up in the morning, at a certain point, that starts to override your sovereignty. It starts to override your free will, because it's not my position to innovate for you. That is your domain, to come up with what you're going to do and do it. And I'm here, my job here is to point out the different traps and pitfalls that you can avoid. So here we go. And these are in no particular order. I just wrote them down as they came to me. So number one, frame this journey properly. And so what I mean by that is to be under no misapprehension that the journey of cultivating consistency and self-discipline is easy. Do not talk about it as if it's easy. Do not believe anybody that says it's easy. For my money, the journey is simple. It can be simple and clear, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy. To enact change in a human being is incredibly difficult. If you've ever tried to train a dog, if you've ever seen perhaps a monkey learn new behavior, or if you've heard about it in any scientific studies, it takes quite a while, especially if there's not a powerful motivating force there. Like, let's just say you need to show up to work on time, otherwise you'll lose your job if you're even a minute late. Like, that's a very powerful motivating force that comes from outside of you, and you're very likely to show up on time. But if you have to do a change and there's nobody to enforce some sort of consequence on you, and you have to enforce the consequences yourself, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of maturity. So just see it the right way and allow this to take place over time. I will say furthermore that it's really appropriate to view this type of thing the way you would view an investment. So an investment is putting a small amount of money into an account regularly over time and buying things that are likely to go up slowly over time, such as like an index fund of the top, of the S&P 500, say, or say in bonds or whatever, where you will yield interest over time, where if you were to give yourself as much time as it takes to really set this habit in place, looking back on this, even if it takes a year to get yourself to just go, have the habit of going to the gym or getting out of bed on time, years and decades from now, you will look back on this with gratitude. Like, my whole life is different because I took the time that I needed to set this one particular habit in place. Compounding interest. And really looking at how different your life can go. Like, so if you're not in the habit of going to the gym and working out, imagine your life progressing for the next 40 years, let's say, but you don't go to the gym, versus the next 40 years, but you do go to the gym. How different will the quality of your life be? So keeping that in mind, we're playing a very long game. It's also worth it. It's worth it. Developing self-discipline is worth it. There's nobody anywhere at any time who has cultivated self-discipline and went through all the trouble and looked back and said, it's not worth it. One of the major excuses that we give to ourselves when it comes time to actually, when the rubber hits the road, is we'll say it's not worth it. And that's a lie. It is. Number 2, black and white thinking will be your biggest obstacle. Black and white thinking, or as we were discussing earlier, dramatization of something, this will be the biggest psychological impediment for you to free yourself from. So as an example of black and white thinking, it's like success and failure thinking. So let's say you commit to not eating dessert after dinner every day, and you succeed for the first 3 days, and then you fail on the 4th day. And then you're like, okay, I failed. And then you write the whole thing off as a failure, right? This would be a very immature way of coming at it. So instead of black and white thinking, we're switching that out with granular thinking. And so we're no longer asking, did you succeed or not, like 0-1 binary style thinking. Now what we're asking is, to what degree did you succeed? Did you make it 3 or 4 days before you had dessert? Oh, is it 3 days? Okay, great. Well, let's do it again and see if we can get that up to 4 days. And then after that, 5 days. And now we have a momentum. Now we are in flow. Another thing is that success, like failure is not an antagonist to success. It's not failure or success. Really, a more mature way of coming at this is seeing success as a stacking of failures. Success is made out of stacked failures. So you commit to doing something, you attempt to do it, you fail, there's a learning that takes place, the experience is integrated, and you do it again. So really, the more failures you can get in, the better. Number 3, commitment might very well be your most powerful tool. Your most powerful tool. Commitment is a real make or break thing here. If you don't commit to doing anything, then the basic guarantee is that nothing will happen. Nothing will change. If I'm speaking to somebody, if I'm coaching somebody and they're unwilling to commit and instead they're like, nah, we'll see. I'm just going to kind of sort of try to work out, exercise. I'm not going to plan on anything in particular, no goal in particular. I'm just going to kind of do this, see what happens kind of thing. Then I know that nothing is going to happen. No substantial change will happen in any lasting way. Maybe a little blip of like something happening for a day or two and then nothing after that. Whereas if we commit to doing something, I commit to going to the gym, I commit to not eating dessert after dinner, I commit to quitting smoking, then there will be success or failure. There still could be failure, but there may also be success. And then if we combine this with our earlier way of coming at it, there's going to be some degree of success until there's a failure. And then once that happens, we'll learn about it, we'll see what happened, see what worked, what didn't work, and then we'll go at it again with a fresh new commitment. So if it's your desire to be disciplined, there's no discipline without commitment. Notice how commitment is scary. There's always something scary about commitment because it means shit's getting real. That's what it is. That's what it means for it to be real. I am claiming that I'm going to do something. If you want better results, tell your friend that you're going to do it. If you want even better results, ask them to hold you accountable. Accountability is not making people feel bad or anything. Accountability is just holding up a person's actions against their words and seeing the degree of match versus mismatch. Number 4, make peace with the reality that there's a part of you that does not want to do this. There is and there always will be a part of you that does not want to do this. And this part of you is not, I repeat, is not your enemy. It is an aspect of you that has its own reasons for not wanting to do this, and it will kick and it will fuss and it will scream and it will negotiate and it will convince and it will persuade and it will sing little songs to you and it will say whatever it has to say to get you to not do this thing. And your job is not to oppose it, be mad at it, frustrated with it, fight it, or try to get rid of it, which would be impossible. Your job is to befriend it, to be on friendly terms with it. And when it protests, you treat it the way you would treat a protesting child. You just say, I hear you, baby. I hear you. I get it. I get it. I'll tell you what, we'll just do this one thing, and then after we're going to do that. It's going to be great. And if it's really that bad, I promise we'll stop. Is that okay? You can have little negotiations, and then ultimately, being in the leadership position over that. So that part still gets a say and it still gets to be the co-pilot, but it's just the co-pilot and it's in the passenger seat and it does not call the shots. You call the shots. There is a very powerful practice that can go with this, that can accompany this. It's a journaling exercise if you're a person who likes to journal like me, where you can ask, how do I benefit from not doing this thing? So once again, how do I benefit from not going to the gym not becoming more healthy, so on and so forth. Or to put the question slightly differently, what is it that is threatening about quitting smoking? What is it about abstaining from eating dessert that is threatening? And allow that part of you to speak freely. And whatever it says, of course, will be irrational. It will be childish because it comes from the irrational and childish element of ourselves. But give it a chance to speak and just listen to it and treat it respectfully. Treat it the way you would treat any sort of low-level trauma. Just like, okay, there's a little bit of fear. There's a little bit of anxiety that I have about this. There's fear of embarrassment. There's fear of doing the wrong thing. There's fear of failing myself. These are all legitimate, even though we know there's nothing truly to be afraid of, the fears themselves are still real and deserve our respect and our love and our attention. And if you can cultivate the ability to dissolve and resolve fear, then there will be less friction for you to do what you're doing. Now, this brings us to the next point, point number 5. The hardest part, usually, when it comes time to do something, is starting. And by this, I mean, when you commit, we could maybe say a very hard part is committing, but let's say you've committed and now it comes time for you to go to the gym. When it comes time to start, that's where you will encounter the most resistance. That's where the part of you that does not want to do this thing, it will put up its biggest, most energetic, most existential fight that it possibly can. And almost always, once you get over the starting point, everything becomes a whole lot easier. And so therefore, especially borrowing on this earlier principle of measuring the degree of success versus whether or not it was success or not, you could commit for just the first month of whatever you're doing to just showing up. I went through a phase where I put out a lot of videos and a lot of content about the importance, the critical importance of just showing up. And so all of that could be summarized right here. Just show up. Like as an example, like I used to hate going to the gym and I used to have the hardest time getting myself to go. Now I go and I quite like going. But even as I go, I still encounter resistance where like I'll do a little bit of cardio and I'll do like 3 heavy duty workouts, like 3 different things. And I'm aware on some level that this is insufficient and it would be ideal to do 4 or 5. But whenever it comes time to do the 4th one, that's where my current threshold is. That's where my boundary is. And that's where I encounter the most resistance. And so it's because I had the discipline to get myself to go to the gym. Now that's the free square on the bingo card. Now that's in my comfort zone. I can now count on myself to go to the gym and do 3 workouts. And so now what I do is, whereas before it was just getting myself to the gym, now I just do like even a little bit of a 4th workout. And I'm just planting little seeds. I'm just getting myself used to doing a 4th workout so that it becomes natural. And then I can always add to it from there. In the meantime, doing cardio and then 3 major workouts, that's still much more than nothing. And I can still benefit from that earlier investment. So that's how I'm going about this journey. So just moving past the threshold, just moving past the starting point, notice what that's like. Number 6, everything is generally better and easier if you're nice to yourself. A big theme on the posts that I would see on r/get disciplined, and this would be just a big salient theme among so many posts, is a general sense of anger and frustration with ourselves. And when we are angry and frustrated with ourselves and we offer judgments and attacks and disappointment to ourselves, we think that we're doing this in order to motivate ourselves, but really we are just only succeeding in generating more suffering that we are experiencing. Because remember, whatever vitriol or judgment or condemnation we're offering to ourselves, we are also on the receiving end of, because we are ourselves. So this generates more suffering, and then it generates more confusion, and it generates more fear. We now become fearful in our own presence because of the fear of receiving and offering more hostility to ourselves. So this generally just throws sand in the gearbox. It just makes everything more difficult. So you could commit now to just, no matter what, being nice to yourself. And then this will lubricate everything else that you do. Number 7, adjust your sense of identity. So what identity do you have for yourself? For example, do you see yourself as somebody that is not disciplined? Do you see yourself as a failure? Do you see yourself as not terribly gifted or talented? Do you see yourself as somebody who the deck is stacked against? Do you see yourself as someone who is unmotivated? So whatever sort of descriptor you've put on yourself as an aspect of your identity, you will be doomed to create that and continue to recreate it and maintain that in your life. And so, and what's kind of interesting is that there are some people who see themselves, say, as a failure, and then they commit to being a success, and they try really, really, really hard to become a success, and eventually do become a success, but then the level of identity doesn't shift, it doesn't change, and they still see themselves as a failure, even though they've clearly created a lot of success for themselves. So the cool secret sort of insider tip for this is to adjust your identity now, regardless of where you are in your journey, because there's no actual arbitrary point in your journey where you would naturally shift your identity. It just doesn't exist. Like, it's not like you become a success when you earn a certain amount of money or your business grows to a certain amount. All of that is just made up artificially by you. And furthermore, there's no benefit from describing yourself as a failure, just for reasons that we were mentioning earlier. So it's enough for you simply to allow yourself to adopt the identity of success, or whatever it is that you just so want to see yourself as and be seen as. So if you wish to be a person who's disciplined and be a person who's focused and a person who's consistent, start describing yourself that way. It will feel foreign and it will go against the way your mind has been habituated because you're used to seeing yourself in a different way. But all you're doing now is just planting seeds for a whole new way of viewing yourself. And then this will make it more easy to adopt everything else that we're describing here in this video. So you could do it as an affirmation. If you like morning affirmation, saying it, you could journal it out. You could journal questions like, what is it like to be consistent? What is it like to be focused? And start to activate that sort of neurochemistry in yourself. And then that will be very helpful. Number 8, don't collapse your situation to the interior or the exterior elements. I will explain what I mean by these two different terms, but we need to give a lot of credit to Ken Wilber and integral thinking for this idea that I'm about to give to you. This is an extremely insider idea that I'm convinced a few, like say tens of years ahead, discussions will include this insight. But this is a very new and young insight for now, but it makes beautiful sense and you will love the clarity that it gives to you. And this is a reward for having made it this far in the video, which I know it's a big ask to stick around for a long video, but anyway, this is really important. The interior, the interior refers to your subjectivity. It refers to doubt, despair, emotion, your idea of yourself, as we were discussing, the flow of your energy, say, when you're up, you're down, this sort of thing. That's the interior. And the exterior is, say, neurochemistry. It's dopamine and serotonin and circadian rhythms. And it also includes your work environment, your room, the degree to which it's messy or chaotic. So that's the exterior. And most people only identify with one or the other. So they, like for me, I used to only come at things from the interior point of view. So this includes your mystics, your hippies, people that are interested in channeled work, those who are interested in spiritual work, those who are like really in touch with their feminine side and their emotion and energies. They tend to come at life itself from only the interior. So just, everything's an interior journey. And then you have, say, the rational sort of scientific types who say, oh no, everything just comes down to dopamine and, making sure your environment is neat and clean. And then if you set up if you just take the right supplements and do the right things, then everything will happen naturally from there. And so in this point, this is your invitation to consider both and don't allow either the interior or the exterior to be your blind spot. So if you have a pristine inner realm, but everything is disorganized and messy and chaotic in your room, then fix that. If you have a squeaky door to be fixed, then get some WD-40 and fix that squeaky door. But at the same time, it would be a huge mistake to come at your life only from the perspective of dopamine and serotonin and, sort of like Andrew Huberman style tips on how to affect your body and your biology. That's essential, but it's not enough. It's not everything. Number 9, don't freak out if you relapse. If you're going really well, everything's going really fine, and then you relapse into old behaviors, don't freak out. Keep a witnessing point of view about yourself. Watch as you run out of energy. Watch as you run to old habits. Notice what happens as you do. Notice yourself going through it. Don't collapse into condemnation, sadness, failure style thinking. Just watch as it happens, especially if it feels like it's out of your hands. It's like, okay, do what you can to minimize damage control. Like don't go nuts. Like just try to hold a little bit of space for it if you can. Notice also what it feels like to dive into these old behaviors. Are they as good as you remember them? Notice also if you find yourself not going as deep as you thought you would have, because your efforts in becoming more disciplined have actually succeeded and taken root, and you're not as gravitated to that old way of being anymore. That can be very, very encouraging to see. So just stay conscious, stay present, witness, move through the whole thing. Don't go too far with it. And then when the coast is clear, commit once again. Stack your failures, get back on the train. Finally, I want to say that bad advice feels bad. This is number 10. Bad advice feels bad. If you are listening to any speaker, reading any book, taking in any piece of advice from anybody at any time, and what's coming at you feels bad in your body, it causes your body to contract, makes you feel confused, makes you feel fearful, makes you feel deficient, makes you feel like you're behind, it's just kind of gnarly. Even if it's sort of motivating, but motivating in a fearful, negative way, don't internalize it. Or rather, there's no need to internalize it, is what I mean to say. There's no need to take it in. Instead, hold out for good advice. Good advice feels good in your body, but also equally good advice leads to action. If you take an advice and you listen to it and you create a plan, you commit to it and you act on it, that's how you know you've heard good advice. Good advice motivates you. and it feels natural, and you're able to operate from center, which is to say you're not operating as if you're behind, as if you're a fuck up, as if you're a failure, as if everybody's disappointed, as if you have to get somewhere in order to prove your worth, as if everybody's impatiently waiting for you to succeed. Good advice just has you start where you are and just begin. Where am I now? Just begin. Just begin. Create a plan, commit, just begin. And that's number 10. So the main takeaway, the main thing, if I were to even boil down everything I've boiled down, so that we're at the core of the core of the core, commitment. Choose something, commit to it. Be aware of when it comes time to act on the thing you committed to, that the resistance will be at its strongest, and it will tell you all sorts of reasons why you shouldn't or don't have to or can't do the thing that you committed to. And you may get bamboozled into it every once in a while, but a really elite tip here is to become familiar with how your own mind talks you out of doing something. Become good at that. Become savvy to how your mind talks you out of doing something. Because if it does, and the moment passes, and then you review, okay, was that the right thing to not do the thing I committed to? Almost every single time, the answer is no. It would have been better if I actually did the thing. So commitment, action. Commitment, action. From action comes true learning, true experience, as opposed to trying to learn and think about the right thing and never taking action, which will only create lots of data and confusion. So I hope this was helpful for you. This was quite a thing to say, to put all together. I'm really, really happy with it. I'm convinced that even just having listened to this, it's activated something in you. But you should consider coming back to this, returning to this, drinking this in even deeper, because all of these principles, it's not like you just hear them and you get them and then that's it. All of these principles are spiral staircases. Like you get it again, you get it deeper and deeper and deeper, and it becomes more clear and the whole picture emerges even better. So really, this video is just the beginning. Nevertheless, I hope it's helping you move into action. One thing for you to note before we go, I have just launched the Sovereign Creators Collective. It is a group membership, and what we do is we get together for twice per month live calls. I coach and I heal and I work with the people in these calls. Tons of time for asking questions, tons of time for advice giving. I'll be able to speak with everybody, at least in the beginning, I suppose, depending on how big the group gets. But it's going to be awesome. There'll be focuses, of course, on this kind of thing, but also finding deep peace, deep wellness, finding your power, clearing the way so that you can express all of your creative potential in the world. It is awesome. The founders discount is available until May 18th. So if you sign up before May 18th, then you can join at 2/3 of the price. So now it's available for $24 Canadian per month. That works out to something like 17 USD per month. So if you're at all thinking about it, now is the time to join. And I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for watching. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Talk to you later.